You're watching All 24 News World News Program, and up next are tonight's top stories. Zionist raids are back in Gaza. The UN is sounding the alarm that most people are malnourished and critical supplies for children are being blocked from entering. Also on our news tonight, Algeria and Zimbabwe discuss boosting military ties, while Mauritania and Djibouti reaffirm commitment to deepen cooperation with Algeria. And later on, new clashes and grim reports from Sudan as rights groups detail killings and abuses by the Rapid Support Forces. Welcome back. First off in our news tonight, Zionist occupation forces carried out new raids across the Gaza Strip, marking the 33rd day since the Gaza ceasefire was declared. Local sources said warplanes bombed areas northeast of Beit Lahia early Wednesday, while heavy shelling leveled several homes in eastern Jabalia. Gunfire was also reported near the Burid refugee camp in central Gaza as warships opened fire off the southern coast. For a second day, civil defense crews are working to recover bodies from the rubble at the Sheikh Redwan clinic in Western Gaza City. In a statement Wednesday, they said the bodies of 35 unidentified martyrs originally buried at the clinic have been moved to Al-Shifa hospital. Samples are being taken so international organizations can work to identify them. Doctors Without Borders says the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip remains catastrophic a month after the fragile ceasefire was declared. In a statement Wednesday, the organization reported that Palestinians are still being killed and wounded daily by Zionist occupation forces near the Yellow Line. It added that these forces continue to block vital humanitarian aid, deepening the suffering of civilians and obstructing relief operations. UNICEF says the Zionist occupation continues to block the entry of vital supplies into the Gaza Strip, including vaccine syringes and baby formula bottles. In a statement, the agency said it's struggling to deliver 1.6 syringes and solar-powered refrigerators needed to store vaccines, noting that the shipment has been waiting for entry permits since August. UNRWA has warned of a looming catastrophe if the Zionist occupation authorities continue to block the entry of tents and shelter equipment into the Gaza Strip. The agency's media advisor Adnan Abu Hasna said 90% of Gaza's population is suffering from some level of malnutrition. He added that hundreds of types of aid remain barred from entering, and no relief shipments have yet passed through the Zakim crossing. Nearly a month after the ceasefire took effect, the suffering of Gaza's residents continues. Despite a relative calm, the humanitarian situation is deteriorating, with families struggling to meet their most basic needs. More on this story with Usama Hayati.
A month has passed since the cessation of hostilities in the Gaza Strip has taken place, yet Palestinians have seen no improvement in their humanitarian situation. It is a tragic reality unprecedented in modern history. The humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza is too vast to be measured in numbers.
We have been hoping for the war to end so that aid could come in to help us. But even after the ceasefire, we haven't received any assistance. Occasionally, we got a small amount of bread, sometimes only once every 3 days. That little bit was barely enough for one meal for the whole family and disappears quickly.
A month has passed, and with each passing day, the tragedy has intensified, yielding nothing but suffering in a land burdened with destruction and death. The displaced in Gaza are bearing the brunt of a new enemy, the exposure, hunger, and the harsh winter looming in the horizon in a strip that has been entirely devastated by the occupation. Nearly 1 million displaced Palestinians in Gaza live in tents that offer no protection from the winter cold or the summer heat. Official figures confirm that 93% of the tents are torn out and unfit for shelter, while winter supplies remain stockpiled in warehouses, prevented from entering by Zionist decision.
الشتاء هذا طبعا الواحد بدش يحكي عن الشتاء لأنه الخوف كبير جدا.
We do not want to talk about winter because the fears are very big. Our tents are completely worn out. We are unable. We do not know what to do. It is not just me. Most of the tents at the school are worn out. We just say, God have mercy on us for the winter. As much as we used to pray for rain to come, now we pray that rain does not come so that we do not struggle.
The occupation insists on obscuring the humanitarian situation in Gaza 2 years after the genocide in an attempt to break the will of the Palestinians and deprive them from one of the basic necessities for a dignified life. This is a post-war Zionist aggression targeting the residents of the Gaza Strip, leaving them exposed under a tattered tent and amidst the rubble of destroyed buildings, awaiting reconstruction that could take decades.
Dozens of extremist settlers stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on Wednesday morning through the Maghariba Gate under heavy protection from Zionist occupation forces. The Islamic Waqf Department in occupied Al-Quds said around 100 settlers carried out provocative tours in the mosque's courtyards and performed Talmudic rituals in its eastern area. It added that occupation forces restricted the entry of worshippers, seizing their identity cards at the outer gates. Switching focus to another topic on news story. Algeria's Army Chief of Staff and Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense, Army General Said Chingriha, held talks with Zimbabwe's Minister of National Defense and Military Veterans Affairs, Opa Mushingiri Kashiri, on strengthening military cooperation between the two countries. According to a statement from the Ministry of National Defense, Chingriha said the visit reflects the deep fraternal and historical ties between Algeria and Zimbabwe and demonstrates the shared commitment of both nations' leadership to advance cooperation, particularly in defense and security.
بمناسبة زياراتكم للجزائر.
On the occasion of your visit to Algeria, I would like to welcome you again along with your accompanying delegation, wishing you a pleasant stay among us. This visit reflects the depth of the brotherly and historical ties linking our two peoples and embodies the shared will of our country's highest authorities to strengthen bilateral cooperation, particularly in the fields of defense and security. Indeed, the historic relations between our two nations date back to the period of our common struggle and the fight of our peoples for freedom, dignity, and national sovereignty. Our countries have contributed since the independence with firm principles and steadfast determination to back in the struggle for Africa's liberation from colonialism and apartheid. The relations between our two nations have always been based on mutual respect, genuine solidarity, and constructive cooperation marked by constant coordination and convergent views on major issues of interest to our continent.
تجاه القضايا الكبرى التي تهم قارتنا.
Army General Chingriha stressed that the partnership between Algeria and Zimbabwe has grown stronger thanks to the efforts of both countries' leaders to boost cooperation and coordination on African and international issues, as well as through the agreements signed across various sectors.
ولقد تعززت هذه الشراكة على إثر الزيارة الرسمية
This partnership was further strengthened following the official visit paid last July by the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe to Algeria at the invitation of his brother Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, and Minister of National Defense. That visit constituted an opportunity to exchange views on ways to consolidate cooperation and enhance coordination on African and international issues of common interest. The visit also culminated in the signing of several agreements and memoranda of understanding in various fields.
ومذكرات تفاهم في عدة مجالات.
Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud visited the Sidal Group's pharmaceutical production unit in Algiers on Wednesday as part of his official visit to Algeria. According to the Algerian press agency, the president toured the facility producing solid medicines for chronic diseases and the department specializing in packaging treatments for cancer patients. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune received a congratulatory message from Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Cheikh Ghazouani on the 71st anniversary of the outbreak of the Liberation War. In his message, Ghazouani wished the Algerian people continued progress and prosperity and reaffirmed Mauritania's commitment to strengthening cooperation between the two nations in interest of both peoples. Djibouti's President Ismail Omar Guelleh sent warm congratulations to Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune on the anniversary of the outbreak of the Algerian War of Independence. In his message, Guelleh reaffirmed his commitment to strengthening the bonds of brotherhood and cooperation between the two countries across all fields, wishing Tebboune success and continued security, prosperity, and progress for the Algerian people while supporting regional stability. Similarly, King Carl Gustaf XVI of Sweden sent his sincerest congratulations to President Abdelmajid Tebboune on the anniversary of the Algerian Revolution, wishing prosperity to the Algerian people, the Algerian presidency reported. Croatian President Zoran Milanovic congratulated President Abdelmajid Tebboune on the anniversary of the Algerian War of Liberation, wishing the country continued progress and prosperity. The Algerian presidency reported that Milanovic also expressed his commitment to strengthening and expanding cooperation between Croatia and Algeria across multiple fields. Tajik President Emomali Rahmoun sent a congratulatory message to Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune on the anniversary of the November 1st revolution, offering his sincere congratulations and best wishes. The Algerian presidency reported that Rahmoun expressed confidence in the continued growth of friendly relations and cooperation between the two countries, and wished Tebboune success in his leadership and continued prosperity for the Algerian people. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune has agreed to German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier's request for a pardon for Boualem Sansal, the Algerian presidency announced Wednesday. The statement said Tebboune received the request on November 10, 2025 and approved it due to its humanitarian nature. In line with the Article 91, Paragraph 8 of the Constitution, and following legal consultations, the pardon was granted with Germany covering Sansal's transfer and medical treatment. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, extended his sincere condolences to his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, on the crash of the Turkish military aircraft in Sinagi region on the Georgian-Azerbaijani border, which resulted in the death of 20 servicemen, praying Allah Almighty to welcome them in His vast paradise and grant their families and loved ones patience and forbearance. Switching focus to the war in Sudan now. Clashes between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces resumed Wednesday morning in the Baba Nusa, West Kordofan. Local sources reported heavy RSF shelling near the Army's 22nd Division headquarters and other positions, with Sudanese forces responding with counter-artillery fire on RSF launch sites. The Sudanese Emergency Lawyers Group reported the deaths of several detainees in RSF detention centers in Yala, South Darfur, due to starvation, mistreatment, and lack of medical care. Speaking to All 24 News TV Wednesday, Mohammed Salah ad-Din, a member of the group's executive office, said 4 detainees died between November 7 and 10 under harsh conditions. He added that the RSF transferred 132 people from Al-Fashar to the Crease prison in Yala between October 29 and November 3.
The Rapid Support Forces, which controlled Al-Fashar between October 26 and 31st, forcibly transferred hundreds of civilians, including the families of military personnel, from Al-Fashar to Niala, specifically to a local area known as Sijin, where hundreds of civilians were detained. They were subjected to harsh treatment and extremely difficult humanitarian conditions, resulting in the deaths of 4 civilian detainees between October 7th and November 10th. Of course, the total number of those forcibly transferred was approximately 132, all between October 23rd and November 3rd.
3 نوفمبر الحالي.
The UN Migration Agency warned Wednesday that humanitarian operations in North Darfur could soon collapse without urgent funding and safe access for aid delivery. The International Organization for Migration said more resources are needed to address the worsening crisis between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, warning of an even greater catastrophe as displacement rises.
I'm in Khartoum and here in Sudan because of the significant scale of the current displacement crisis. You're all seeing the reports from Al-Fashar. We have seen 90,000 people displaced in the last 2.5 weeks from Al-Fashar, another 50,000 or so displaced from the Cornavans. What we're also seeing is that when people are coming out of the area, they are reporting widespread violence, sexual abuse, civilians who are sometimes being shot on site. I was at an IOM warehouse in Port Sudan. We have fewer than 5,000 kits available to people. The last 35 of our tents have gone out the door now. UNHCR is waiting now for about 2,000 tents that are still in customs. But as you can imagine, as I've described, the scale of the displacement will not be met with 2,000 tents. So there is a very, very urgent and critical need to scale up the resources. And that's true across the board for all of the parts of the humanitarian response.
The Sudanese government vowed to continue its efforts to expel the Rapid Support Forces and reclaim every part of the country. Foreign Minister Mahidin Salem described the situation as a direct invasion marked by killings, torture, and looting. He called the RSF's abuses against civilians in Al-Fashar unforgivable and urged that those responsible to be prosecuted before the international courts.
سنواصل إن شاء الله في مساعينا.
God willing, we will continue our efforts to expel these militias and mercenaries from our country. This is a direct invasion for someone to come to this country with no other purpose than to kill, drag, steal, loot, and then flee. If the international community truly wants to address the situation in Sudan, it must address it with this level of detail and on this scale.
Moving on to a different matter, Sahrawi President Brahim Ghali praised Angola's key role during its African Union presidency in supporting just causes, including the Sahrawi people's struggle for self-determination. The Sahrawi news agency reported that Ghali met Angolan President João Lourenço in Luanda during celebrations of Angola's 50th independence anniversary. The Uruguayan-Austrian accreditation body has suspended all activities in Western Sahara, citing the impossibility of conducting accreditation without following the Sahrawi standards and securing guarantees for issuing certificates. The International Observatory for Monitoring Western Sahara Resources reported that the body informed the Sahrawi embassy in Montevideo last July of the suspension, in line with the international standards. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev praised the strong ties between their countries during a meeting at the Kremlin on Wednesday. Putin described Kazakhstan as one of Russia's closest partners and most reliable allies. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the leaders would discuss gas projects, the impact of U.S. sanctions on Russian oil companies, and updates from Tokayev's recent talks with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington.
Our relations with Kazakhstan are developing steadily, and practice and experience confirm what is written in our fundamental documents. Kazakhstan and Russia are each other's closest partners, friends, and reliable allies.
Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev said Kazakhstan and Russia are nearing the signing of key agreements to move forward with the construction of a nuclear power plant.
I would like to highlight our cooperation with Russia in nuclear energy. We're very close to signing very important agreements which will pave the way to nuclear power plant construction in cooperation with Rosatom.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Wednesday for the resignation of the Justice and Energy ministers amid a major corruption scandal in the energy sector. Zelensky said the ministers cannot remain in office, condemning ongoing corruption while Ukrainians face daily power outages caused by Russian attacks.
I believe the Justice Minister and Energy Minister can no longer remain in their positions. This is a matter of trust. If there are accusations, they must be addressed, and suspending them from their duties is an emergency decision. I have requested their resignation letters from the Prime Minister of Ukraine and call on members of Parliament to support this decision.
The G7 foreign ministers are meeting in Ontario, Canada to discuss global issues, including the war in Ukraine and Caribbean tensions. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand said the talks, starting Wednesday evening, will focus on promoting long-term peace in the Middle East, strengthening security in the Indo-Pacific, and tackling drug trafficking in the Caribbean. In a related news story, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on Tuesday signed a new defense law outlining measures to confront U.S. threats and ordered the activation of the National Comprehensive Defense Command in preparation for a possible armed conflict. Maduro stated that the law enables the country to be ready to defend itself and to engage in armed struggle to protect the sacred legacy of the liberators. With the signing of this law, all comprehensive defense commands have been activated, bringing together all Venezuelan state institutions, the military, and popular forces. In Lebanon, drought and invasive insects are threatening pine forests, affecting both timber and pine nut production. Prices have soared above $100 per kilogram, hitting farmers' incomes hard, particularly in southern regions. Nabil Khazini has more.
For Nabil, the landscape up from this tree is no longer the same. The trees now tell a different story, and the rhythm of life in the forest is under threat. Farmers have watched their harvests dwindle for years, blaming the weather, until 2015, when scientists confirmed a silent invader had arrived. A tiny North American insect feeding on the cones now threatens up to 82% of seeds in some trees. Weakened by droughts and rising temperatures, Lebanon's ancient pines are struggling to fight back.
There used to be more than 200 to 250 of us working during the season, between tree workers and field workers. Now we're less. Barely 20 to 30 people work because the season has slowed down. There's no pine season. The cones aren't good. They are empty.
Efforts to fight the pest are underway, with farmers learning to identify outbreaks and take part in forest management. But experts warn that without a broader strategy, the forest's survival and the livelihoods it supports remain at risk.
The forest needs special treatment. We have to deal with it as an orchard, more than a pine forest. Nowadays, people only come to trim, to take wood or saw. Today, I think there should be awareness from the relevant authorities. At the same time, the Ministry of Agriculture is working on unifying the information related to how to organize the forest, restore it, and ensure it continues to produce as it did before, or even better.
In southern Lebanon, Bekassin Forest holds nearly 100,000 pines, each a silent witness to the struggles of nature and those who depend on it. These trees carry the rhythms of life and labor, standing resilient, yet vulnerable under the quiet pressure of a changing climate.
It is time to catch up on more international news stories in the News in Brief.
18 bodies have been recovered after a Turkish C-130 military cargo plane crashed in Jordan's Kakheti region, according to Interior Minister Gela Gilazzi. 2 soldiers remain missing. The aircraft carrying 20 Turkish soldiers from Azerbaijan to Turkey went down on Tuesday. Ankara confirmed all 20 were killed, the deadliest Turkish military accident since 2020. Investigations are underway at the crash site.
Iraq's High Electoral Commission announced the preliminary results of the parliamentary elections. On Wednesday evening, the commission revealed the initial results of the vote count, showing that Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's party, the Reconstruction and Development Coalition, was leading in more than 9 provinces, including the capital Baghdad, followed by the Taqaddum party, while the State of Law coalition came in third. The commission stated that voter turnout stood out at 56.11%, noting that the results of the manual recount were fully consistent with the electronic tally.
The International Atomic Energy Agency on Wednesday called on Iran to allow it to verify its stockpiles of enriched uranium, particularly its reserves of highly enriched uranium. According to Agence France-Presse, the agency said in its latest report that it has lost information regarding the quantities of previously declared nuclear material in Iran's damaged facilities. The agency described Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium as a matter of grave concern, noting that verification efforts have been significantly delayed after 5 months without access.
At least 29 people have died after a boat carrying Rohingya refugees sunk near the maritime border between Malaysia and Thailand. Search and rescue teams on Malaysia-Langkawi Island recovered 2 more bodies on Wednesday, both male. According to the Malaysian Maritime Reinforcement Agency, 13 survivors have been found since Saturday. The victims were among Rohingya's refugees attempting to flee Myanmar and overcrowded camps in Bangladesh, continuing a dangerous journey many have taken in search of safety.
And that wraps up our news program for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great night.